This is HFY Vanguard, where human courage is sharper than any alien blade. The saga starts now. Jamie Hart stood at the docking port with the sensation of weight pressing oddly against his body, as though gravity itself were heavier here on Proxima Century B. The station air smelled different, too faintly metallic with a tang of ozone, as if the entire world were running through an enormous power conduit. After 6 months drifting in cryosleep and 2 weeks of mandatory quarantine, he was finally outside again, boots planted firmly on alien soil. The curved towers of Proxima Central glistened in the haze of the twin orange suns. They weren't warm, not exactly, more like harsh spotlights that washed the settlement in a constant sepia glow. His breath fogged slightly inside the exosuit's filtered helm. He touched the control at his jawline, venting the visor so he could taste the air. It was dry, almost arid, carrying the faint bitterness of radiation, harmless in small doses, deadly if one lingered without shielding. Jamie tugged at the collar of his suit, the protective plating snug around his shoulders. The black armor hugged his frame like a second skin designed both for survival and for image. Interviews in corporate towers demanded appearances, and he wanted them to see a competent, disciplined human, not some desperate migrant fleeing Earth's overcrowded megacities. "This is it," he muttered under his breath. "Don't screw it up." Vortex Industries had a reputation, the biggest, richest conglomerate on Proxima, a company with contracts that spanned half the sector. Securing an engineering job with them meant a future, a real one. No more scraping in the endless gray sprawl of Earth's megacities waiting in line for ration slips. Here there would be clean water, actual food, maybe even a place to call his own. He entered the looming building, its surface a strange living alloy that shimmered faintly, as though pulsing with a heartbeat. The lobby curved upward in translucent arcs, everything too bright and too smooth. A receptionist stood behind a glowing desk, a tall Proximan with iridescent skin that shifted from green to violet in the shifting light. They raised a delicate hand, gesturing toward a door that materialized out of thin air. "Director Pell will see you now." Jaime squared his shoulders. "Time to impress." The office was cold, not in temperature, though the air conditioning did bite, but in atmosphere. A desk made of polished bone stretched between him and a bulbous figure perched behind it. Director Pell's mottled green skin folded in thick ridges across his torso, 3 eyes blinking independently as he studied Jaime. 4 hands, long and spindly, rested on the surface, twitching faintly as if impatient. "Mr. Hart," Pell's voice rolled through the translator with a metallic undertone, each syllable precise and clipped. "Your credentials are adequate. However, before we consider your application, I must address several concerns." Jamie forced a confident nod. "Of course, sir. I'm prepared to answer any—" "Is it true," Pell interrupted, "that humans require regular periods of unconsciousness? 1/3 of your lifespan wasted in this sleep state." Jamie's lips parted. "Well, yes, but—" "And you excrete waste multiple times daily through designated orifices." Heat flushed Jamie's face. "That's biologically necessary for most species, isn't it?" Pell's middle eye narrowed to a slit. "And you consume deceased organic matter for sustenance, barbaric." "With all due respect," Sir Jaime said, struggling to keep his tone steady, "I came here to discuss my engineering expertise, not to debate human biology." "Indeed." "One final question." Pell leaned forward, shadows gathering across his alien features. "Is it accurate that humans form emotional attachments to non-sentient creatures, even those belonging to entirely different species?" For a moment, Jaime hesitated. He remembered the golden retriever he'd grown up with in the stacked housing blocks of old New York, the way the dog had been his one anchor in a life otherwise consumed by concrete and noise. Sometimes, yes, companionship is part of unacceptable. Pell slammed all 4 hands on the desk, the sound echoing like a drumbeat. "Vortex cannot risk employing a species that diverts resources to non-productive entities based on feelings. Your application is denied, Mr. Hart. Humans remain too primitive for our corporate culture. Security will escort you out." 2 massive guards emerged from concealed doors, their shadows falling across the floor. Jamie's fist clenched instinctively. He could almost imagine striking back defiance pouring into the sterile room, but he forced himself still. To start an interplanetary incident over pride would doom any future here. Fine, he growled, turning on his heel. Your loss. 30 minutes later, he drifted through the chaos of Proxima Central Market. The marketplace was nothing like the polished towers. Stalls of every imaginable material stretched in haphazard rows. Fabrics that shimmered like liquid produce, that writhed in bowls, metals that hummed faintly with energy. Vendors shouted in a cacophony of dialects, the translator in Jamie's ear struggling to keep pace. It rendered everything into accented English, a slurry of words and tones that pounded against his skull. The smell was worse, spices, oils, animal musk, acrid fumes from machines. 6 months in a metal coffin for nothing, he muttered, sidestepping a hovering cart piled high with wriggling tentacled fruits. He kept moving, letting the crowd swallow him, but then a flash of lavender caught his eye. Behind a stall lined with crystalline herbs and jars of glowing powders stood one of the most striking figures he'd ever seen. She was humanoid, at least broadly. Silvery hair spilled in intricate braids down her back, her skin a luminous shade of soft violet that seemed to radiate its own light. When her amber eyes lifted to his, he felt momentarily frozen, caught in the gravity of her gaze. You appear lost, Earthling, she said, her voice melodic even through the translator. Jaime approached suddenly, self-conscious of his disheveled armor, the scuffs of rejection still weighing heavily on him. That obvious, huh? Few humans wander our market district. She gestured lightly toward her wares, her slender, four-fingered hand brushing across jars of powder that glittered like starlight. Perhaps some Proximan saffron to lift your spirits. It produces mild euphoria in most carbon-based species. Jamie managed a half-smile. I could use something stronger after the day I've had. Job interview at Vortex, she guessed without hesitation. Her hands moved gracefully as she arranged her merchandise, and the faint aroma of spice drifted toward him. His brow furrowed. How did you? The exosuit, the expression of defeat. Director Pell is notorious for his biases. Jamie leaned against the stall, exhaling a humorless laugh. Jamie, he offered. Lona, she replied, extending her hand. Her touch was cool, almost electric. First time off-world, she asked. Before he could answer, a high-pitched whimper cut through the market's din. Both turned instinctively toward the sound. It came from a nearby food stall where a gaunt, gray-skinned alien was sharpening a massive cleaver. Beside him, tied to a post, were two small creatures. Jamie froze. They resembled Earth puppies, yet not. Their fur shimmered a brilliant sapphire blue, each strand sparkling like threads of crystal. Their eyes were impossibly large, reflective, and deep, as if they held galaxies within them. The cubs trembled, pressing close to one another, while the alien chef tested his blade on a block of wood. What the hell is that guy doing? Jaime demanded. Lona's expression darkened. Preparing Caruan cubs for the grill. Their meat is considered a delicacy among the Kreks. They're just babies. Many believe their fear tenderizes the flesh. Jaime's stomach lurched. The chef raised the cleaver, its blade catching the light, and something inside Jaime snapped. The crowd thickened around the stall as the gray-skinned chef lifted his cleaver. Alien shoppers pressed in their varied faces, reflecting everything from mild curiosity to open hunger. The two cubs whimpered louder, the sound so heartbreakingly familiar that Jami's chest constricted. It was the sound of innocence pleading for help, a sound that transcended species. Before he could think, his legs carried him forward. He shoved past a cluster of insectoid merchants, ignoring their angry clicks, and vaulted toward the stall, just as the cleaver arced downward. The blade struck with a ringing clang, but instead of blue fur, it met metal. Jaime's armored forearm intercepted the strike, his gauntlet absorbing the impact with a shriek of stressed servos. Sparks erupted in brilliant arcs, scattering across the dirt floor. The crowd gasped, some hissing in alarm, others laughing with cruel delight. The chef staggered back, his three-pupiled eyes narrowing. Human filth, he spat, voice translated into a guttural snarl. You damaged my blade for worthless Caruan meat. Jaime's arm burned where the suit's circuitry shorted out the heat, searing through layers of padding. He ignored the pain, his focus locked on the trembling cubs. Worth more than your damn knife, he growled. The chef lunged, but Jamie was faster. With his free hand, he fumbled at the restraints binding the cubs. The knots were tight, rough cord biting into sapphire fur. The cubs whimpered and pressed closer together, their galaxy-deep eyes locked on him with something more than fear, something like recognition. The first rope snapped loose, then the second. The cubs stumbled free, collapsing against Jamie's chest. Their fur was unbelievably soft, damp with terror, their tiny bodies shaking violently. The chef bellowed a phrase the translator refused to process, too guttural and venomous. He raised the cleaver again, but by now the marketplace had shifted. Dozens of aliens circled the scene. Some jeered amused at the humans' reckless interference. Others whispered their eyes wide as though witnessing something dangerous. A few even looked inspired. "You'll pay for this, human," the chef hissed. "Interfering with commerce is a Class 2 violation. Security will stretch your hide beside these vermin." A hand landed on Jamie's shoulder, slender lavender, urgent. Lona's amber eyes burned with intensity. "We need to leave. Now." "What about? Bring them. Quickly." Jaime didn't hesitate. He scooped up the cubs, one under each arm. They whimpered softly but did not resist, as if understanding he meant no harm. His damaged suit sparked again, sending a painful jolt up his arm. The crowd parted with murmurs as Lona yanked him toward a narrow alleyway. Behind them, the chef's enraged cries echoed, promising retribution. The alley stank of rotting produce and acrid chemical runoff. Pipes dripped foul liquid into gutters that steamed faintly under the sun's glare. Jamie's boots splashed. As he stumbled after Lona, the cubs clutched tightly against his chest. "I need to get this suit off before it fries me alive," he gasped. Sweat poured down his face inside the cracked helmet, his bicep throbbing where the servos had shorted. "Almost there," Lona said, glancing back. Her braids shimmered as they caught the thin light silver strands glowing in the shadows. "Keep moving." They darted through a series of cramped passageways, twisting between stacked habitation units. The sounds of the marketplace faded, replaced by the distant wail of security sirens. Jaime knew they would be coming, organized, armed, relentless. Finally, Lona stopped before a rust-colored door, half hidden behind a pile of discarded containers. She pressed her palm against the scanner, and the door hissed open with grudging reluctance. "Inside," she urged. The room beyond was small but surprisingly clean. Sparse furnishings filled the space, a cooking unit in one corner, a simple sleeping platform in another, and tapestries stitched with star maps hanging across the walls. The air smelled faintly of herbs, a welcome reprieve from the stench outside. "Put them down," Lona said, pointing to a woven mat. Jaime lowered the cubs gently. They immediately huddled together, watching him with wide eyes, their sapphire fur shimmering faintly in the dim light. His suit emitted another shower of sparks, and he winced as heat surged along his arm. "This is going to hurt," Lona warned, stepping close. Her fingers brushed the emergency release clasps. "Ready." He nodded. The clasp released with a hiss, and the suit disconnected from his neural interface. White-hot pain shot through his nervous system, and he gasped, staggering. Lona steadied him with cool hands, guiding the armor off piece by piece until he stood in nothing but the thin undersuit. "Sorry," she murmured, fingertips grazing his flushed skin as she removed the final fragments. Neural feedback is always unpleasant. Jaime swallowed hard, acutely aware of their proximity. Her scent was subtle, floral, intoxicating. His pulse quickened. "You risked everything," she said softly, eyes fixed on his face. "For creatures you had never seen before. Most species would not intervene." "Couldn't just watch them die," he replied, his voice rougher than he intended. "Where I come from, we protect the innocent." Her lips curved into a faint smile. "Humans are fascinating, so physically similar to many races, yet your minds are different." One of the cubs toddled forward on unsteady legs. It sniffed at Jaime's hand, then pressed its tiny head against his fingers. He stroked its fur, gently marveling at the impossible softness. The cub purred, or something like it, a sound halfway between a chirp and a sigh. "They trust you," Reddy Lona observed. "Saruans are empathic. They sense intentions." Jaime looked up at her, meeting her amber gaze. A current seemed to pass between them, unspoken, powerful. For the first time since stepping off the transport, he felt something other than rejection. Purpose. The night deepened outside, though the sun's never truly set on Proxima. In Lona's small refuge, time felt suspended. The cubs slept curled together on the woven mat, their tiny chests rising and falling in perfect harmony. Lona moved about the room with fluid grace, preparing a meal from crystalline herbs and nutrient paste. Jaime watched her every motion hypnotic. "You're not just a spice merchant, are you?" he asked finally. Her laugh was soft, musical. "No, that is my cover. In truth, I work with the Stellar Conservation Alliance. We rescue endangered species from the black market." "Like them," Jaime said, glancing at the cubs. "Yes, the Krex consider their meat a delicacy, but Sarans are more than food. Their empathic abilities make them unique, worth protecting." Jaime leaned back against the wall, exhaustion pulling at him, but unable to dim the fire in his chest. "Then I'm glad I was here." She studied him, amber eyes gleaming. "You may have changed more than just their fate today." Later, when the room had gone quiet and only the faint hum of city generators filled the air, Jamie found himself sitting beside Lona on the sleeping platform. Their shoulders brushed the contact electric. "You left Earth to find a job," she said. "Instead, you found a cause." He smiled faintly, and maybe more than that. When she turned to him, their faces closed, the warmth of her breath brushed against his skin. The moment stretched fragile and infinite until she closed the distance. Her lips were cool at first, then warmer, and Chaime's heart pounded with a rhythm that drowned out the entire alien world. In the corner, the cubs stirred their fur, glowing faintly, as though reflecting the emotions in the room. The suns had dipped low enough that the market noise outside Lona's apartment faded into muffled echoes. Inside, the air was still almost sacred. Jamie sat cross-legged on the woven mat, where the two Kuroan cubs now lay nestled together. Their sapphire furs shimmered faintly in the dim glow of a wall-mounted lamp, casting delicate blue light across his hands. He couldn't stop watching them. Every small movement, every twitch of their oversized ears, every soft chirp in their sleep struck him as unbearably precious. Back on Earth, animals were rare in the megacities. Genuine pets were luxury items. Most families had only digital companions or robotic stand-ins. Jamie had grown up with one of the last real dogs in his district, a shaggy mutt that slept at the foot of his bunk until old age took him. Seeing these creatures now so alien, yet so familiar, tore open something in his chest. He realized with a pang that he would bleed for them again without hesitation. "You're staring," Alona teased gently from across the room. She was crouched over a low counter, arranging herbs into small clay bowls. Her hair had come loose from its braids, silver strands tumbling around her shoulders. She looked less like the composed merchant he had first seen, and more like a woman at home, relaxed, unguarded. "Hard not to," Jaime said, tearing his gaze from the cubs. "They're incredible. Most passers-by see only meat." Her tone darkened. She sprinkled a pinch of powder into a simmering pan, releasing a fragrance of spice and citrus. "That is why my work exists. Too many species treat the galaxy as a buffet, never stopping to consider the lives they consume." Jaime rose stiffly and joined her. The soreness in his arm from the cleaver strike throbbed with every step. "You said you work with a conservation alliance. What exactly do you do?" Lona hesitated, then glanced at him sidelong. "We smuggle, rescue when possible, relocate endangered beings to safe sanctuaries. Sometimes we sabotage hunting rings." Her amber eyes held his steadily. "It is dangerous work. It requires allies I can trust." The words lingered between them, heavy with meaning. Jaime sensed she wasn't merely sharing information, she was testing him. "Well," he said after a moment, "you can trust me. I didn't come 6 months across space just to stand by while people kill puppies." That earned him a soft laugh, like chimes in a breeze. "Puppies. That is what you call them?" He shrugged. "Closest word I know." The cub stirred, then one stretching and patting across the mat toward him. Its eyes, starlit, impossibly deep, met his, and Jaime felt a jolt in his chest. A warmth spread through him, unfamiliar and yet comforting. It was like being seen not just with eyes, but with something deeper. Lona set down her utensils and came to kneel beside him. "Do you feel it?" she whispered. Jaime nodded slowly. "It's like they know me, like they can feel what I'm thinking." "They can," Lona said. "Serwans are empathic. They sense intention, emotion. That is why they are so vulnerable to exploitation. Hunters use their fear against them. But here, She reached out and stroked the cub's fur. They sense your protection, your compassion. The cub pressed its nose into Kami's palm, and for a moment he swore he felt an echo, his own emotions mirrored back at him, amplified. A flood of tenderness, fierce and unyielding. He inhaled sharply. That's new, he murmured. Rare, Lona corrected. Most species do not bond with Saruwan so quickly. You must have a resonance they respond to. Dinner passed quietly, though not without meaning. Lona prepared a dish of spiced grains and root vegetables, serving it in simple bowls. Jaime tasted cautiously at first, but soon devoured it hungrily, surprised at how delicious alien food could be when made with care. The cubs were given a nutrient solution, which they lapped eagerly before curling back against each other, full bellies rising and falling in rhythm. As they ate, Lona shared more of her life. She had grown up in Proxima's poorer districts, daughter of traders who barely scraped by. She'd seen too many species fall victim to the appetites of the powerful. When she was young, she'd befriended a Carwin cub, smuggled through the markets, only to watch helplessly as it was sold to a Crex butcher. That loss had shaped her, pushing her into the underground network that fought to save others. Listening to her, Jaime felt both admiration and anger. Admiration for her courage, anger at a galaxy that could treat innocent lives as commodities. He told her about Earth, about the dying who had been his only solace in the crowded concrete warrens. Lona listened intently, her expression softening with each detail. You loved it, she said simply. Yeah, Jaime admitted, and losing him hurt like hell, but I wouldn't trade the years we had. Lona tilted her head, studying him. That is the difference. Most beings see love as valuable only if it leads to gain offspring, alliances, resources. Humans, you love for its own sake, even knowing it will end. Jaime's throat tightened. Guess that's just who we are. Later, when the meal was cleared and the cubs slept soundly, silence filled the small room again. Jaime sat on the edge of the sleeping platform, fatigue weighing on him. Lona moved to his side without a word. For a long moment, they simply sat there, shoulders touching. Finally, she spoke. Today you risked your life. Not for your people, not for glory. For two frightened creatures you did not know. That is extraordinary. Didn't feel extraordinary, Jaime said, voice low. Felt like the only choice I could live with. She turned her face close to his. That choice tells me more about you than any resume or credential. Her fingers brushed his cheek, cool and light. Jaime's heart hammered. Slowly, as if gravity itself pulled them, their lips met. This kiss was different from the tentative one earlier. Deeper, hungrier. Their arms wrapped around each other, bodies pressing close. Jaime felt the tension of the day melt away into something primal, urgent. Lona's bioluminescent skin glowed faintly, her lavender hue intensifying as their breaths mingled. The cubs shifted their fur, glowing brighter, as though responding to the wave of emotion filling the room. Jaime broke the kiss long enough to laugh softly. Even they can feel it. Lona smiled, her amber eyes blazing. Then let them. They remind us what we fight for. The hours that followed blurred into something Jaime could hardly name. It was passion, yes, but also discovery. Every difference between them, her 4 fingers fitting surprisingly well between his 5. The faint shimmer of her skin against his was both alien and wondrous. They moved together not just as bodies, but as minds, their emotions feeding back through the empathic cubs, until it felt like the universe itself resonated with their connection. When exhaustion finally claimed them, Jaime lay awake for a while, staring at the ceiling. Lona curled against his chest. He felt a peace he hadn't known in years, maybe ever. For the first time since leaving Earth, he wasn't just surviving, he was living. Morning came with soft light seeping through the slatted windows. Jaime stirred to find one of the cubs sprawled across his chest, its tiny snores vibrating against him. The other nestled against Lona's side. She opened her eyes slowly, meeting his gaze with a smile that made his chest ache. You look different, she said. Different, how? Lighter, as if some burden has been lifted. Jaime chuckled. Guess alien puppies and alien spice merchants have that effect. She swatted him playfully, then sobered. Do not joke. What happened yesterday was dangerous. The Crex will not forget. And Vortec, her voice trailed off. They are already suspicious of humans. Your actions made you noticeable. Jaime sat up carefully, moving the cub to the mat. Let them notice. I'm not here to play by their rules. I came for a job, but maybe I found something more important. Lona studied him quietly, then nodded. Perhaps you have. That day passed in cautious seclusion. Lona did not risk reopening her stall, and Jaime dared not show his face in the market. Instead, they remained in the apartment, tending to the cubs and speaking in low tones about what might come next. Jamie repaired what he could of his damaged suit, though much of its circuitry was beyond salvaging. Lona showed him encrypted channels her network used, whispering of smugglers, safe houses, and sanctuaries scattered across the stars. At times they laughed, at times they sat in comfortable silence. The cubs played clumsily around them, their glowing fur leaving trails of light like starlight on the floor. Jaime found himself smiling more than he had in years. But beneath it all lingered unease. The galaxy was vast, ruthless, and watching, and sooner or later the consequences of his choice in the market would come crashing down. The days that followed felt like living under a silent countdown. Jamie and Lona kept to the shadows of the city's poorer districts, never lingering in one place for long. The cubs adjusted quickly, their playfulness returning once the initial fear faded, but Jaime noticed something strange whenever they were near him. Their fur shimmered brighter, and when he touched them, he felt faint pulses of emotion, echoes that weren't entirely his own. Lona confirmed his suspicion one night as they sat on the balcony of a rundown habitation stack. Your resonance with them is unique, she said quietly, watching the cubs chase each other across the floor. Sarwans are empathic, yes, but with you it is more. They're amplifying you and you them. It is dangerous. Dangerous, how? Jaime asked, leaning forward. Because Vortex is always listening, and if they sense what you can do. She trailed off, shaking her head. They will not let you go. Her words proved prophetic sooner than either expected. On the fourth day, Jaime's communicator buzzed with an encrypted message from Vortex Industries. His stomach dropped when he read the contents. Application status updated, approved. Report to headquarters at your earliest convenience. Division Xenobiology. Jaime nearly dropped the device. What the hell? Lona leaned over his shoulder, her amber eyes narrowing. Approved. After Pell humiliated you. Exactly, Jaime muttered. Something doesn't add up. It's a trap, Lona said firmly. Or an opportunity, Jamie countered. They argued late into the night. Lona warned of Vortex history classified projects, whispers of illegal experimentation. Jamie insisted that he couldn't ignore the offer. Whatever Vortex wanted, it clearly related to the cubs. If he played along, maybe he could learn enough to stop them. Finally, Lona relented, though her expression remained grim. Then you won't go alone. My network will provide what cover we can. But you must understand, Jamie. If they uncover you, they will dissect you. He squeezed her hand. Then I'll just have to make sure they don't. The next morning, Jaime walked once more through Vortex's gleaming lobby, a hastily purchased replacement exosuit cladding his body. It lacked the advanced systems of his original, but at least it concealed his nerves. He carried a small container under his arm. Inside, one of the cubs, whom they had named Nova for the starburst patterns in its eyes, slept peacefully under the influence of a mild sedative Lona had provided. The other cub, Stellar, remained hidden in her apartment. Insurance, she'd called it, though the way she cradled the little creature suggested something deeper. As Jaime approached the security checkpoint, he muttered under his breath, "Focus, heart." The reptilian receptionist at the desk demanded identification. Jaime presented his Earth passport and the approval code. After a tense scan, the alien nodded and gestured toward the elevators. Director Pell is expecting you. Level 42, Xenobiology. The elevator's glass walls carried him upward through the tower's hollow core. He fought the urge to fidget, forcing his breathing steady. In his ear, a discreet earpiece whispered with Lona's voice. Maintain your cover story. You know nothing about Sarwans beyond what you saw in the market. You're just eager for the job. Got it, Jamie murmured. When the elevator doors opened, the sterile corridors of the xenobiology wing stretched before him. The air smelled faintly of disinfectant and ozone. Biometric scanners guarded every doorway, and guards with energy rifles stood at rigid attention. Jamie's unease deepened. Director Pell awaited him in his office exactly as before. The mottled alien regarded Jaime with an expression that might have been amusement. Mr. Hart, your return is unexpected. Your offer was unexpected as well, Jamie replied evenly. I'm curious what changed your mind. Let us call it a reassessment of priorities, Pell said smoothly, his three eyes blinking in sequence. His gaze flicked to the container. I see you've brought a specimen. Jamie set the container on the desk. Encountered it in the market district. Seemed like an opportunity given your interest in Sherwin biology. Pell's middle eye narrowed slightly. Indeed, follow me. Dr. Kren will brief you. The laboratory they entered was vast and cold. Transparent containment units lined the walls filled with sterile light. Jamie's stomach clenched when he saw what lay inside three of them. Adult Sherwins, or what was left of them. Their fur, once radiant blue, had dulled to a patchy gray. Their bodies twitched with exhaustion, eyes glazed. They lay sprawled listlessly, breathing shallowly. The sight filled Jamie with a surge of anger so strong he had to clench his fists to keep from shouting. A spindly alien with 6 arms and compound eyes scuttled forward. His voice buzzed as the translator struggled. The human arrives, excellent, and with a specimen. Perfect timing. This is Dr. Kren, Pell introduced. Kren's compound eyes reflected Jamie's image back at him like a hall of mirrors. You know of Sherwin physiology. Only that they're empathic, Jamie said cautiously. More than empathic, Kren hissed with excitement. Revolutionary. They process and neutralize radiation through their empathic centers, specifically the same radiation produced by faster-than-light drives. Jamie's mind raced. FTL radiation was the greatest health hazard in space travel, requiring massive shielding that limited ship design. You're using them as living radiation shields, he said flatly. Biological processors, Pell corrected, far more efficient than mechanical systems. And the psychological applications, Jaime asked before he could stop himself. Both aliens froze. Pell's 3 eyes blinked in rapid succession. How did you? It's the logical conclusion, Jaime improvised quickly. If they convert radiation to emotional energy, then with conditioning you could weaponize it. Fear, confusion, even emotional collapse in enemy forces. A slow smile spread across Pell's face. You are more perceptive than I anticipated, Mr. Hart. Yes, Project Empath has dual applications, radiation shielding and psychological warfare. Jaime forced his face to remain neutral while his stomach turned. The perfect, non-lethal weapon, he observed coldly. Precisely, Pell said. But the specimens collapse under strain. We need stability. That's where you come in, Kren added. Humans possess unusual empathic resonance with unrelated species. Your brain patterns may provide the key. You want to study my brain? Jamie asked, masking his disgust. Among other things, Kren buzzed eagerly. No other species would risk injury for creatures they had never seen. It is inefficient. It is human. They strapped him to an examination table, sensors pressed to his temples. Nova's container was placed nearby, the cub stirring as if sensing his distress. Focus on the specimen, Kren instructed. Direct your feelings toward it. Jaime met Nova's gaze through the glass. Instantly, warmth surged through him, protective, fierce. The monitor above exploded in colors. Extraordinary, Kren shrieked. The resonance is magnitudes beyond predictions. Then something strange happened. Nova's fur began to glow, faint pulses in rhythm with Jamie's heartbeat. Across the room, the adult Sherwins stirred their dull fur, regaining hints of vibrancy. What's happening? Pell demanded. A resonance cascade, Kren stammered. The human's empathy is amplifying theirs. Alarms blared, red lights strobed, voices shouted in the corridors. Jaime felt a wave of emotion slam into him. Fear, hope, pain, an overwhelming storm of consciousness not his own. Staff collapsed outside the lab, some laughing hysterically, others weeping. Guards dropped weapons, racked by emotions they couldn't control. Shut it down, Pell shouted. Kren fumbled at the controls, but he too succumbed, giggling uncontrollably. Jaime, somehow centered in the chaos, tore the sensors from his head himself. The wave receded, the Sherwins calmed, though their fur remained faintly glowing. Breathless, Jaime sat up. What just happened? Before Pell could answer, the lab doors opened with a hiss. A tall alien entered, crimson-skinned with bony ridges over his brow. His uniform gleamed with military insignia. Authority radiated from every movement. General Moore, Pell said, bowing slightly. This is the human. The general circled Hamey like a predator. His voice was deep resonant. So, you've experienced it firsthand. Prolonged exposure enhances empathic abilities, increased intuition, even limited telepathy. You're developing a weapon, Jaime said bitterly, in a luxury treatment. Moore's eyes glittered. Precisely. Imagine diplomats who can sense lies, therapists who feel their patients' pain, lovers who experience each other's pleasure. The civilian market alone will make us gods. And the Sarans suffer, Jamie snapped. Regrettable but necessary. Moore leaned close, his voice dropping. The timeline accelerates. The Taurian hegemony grows bolder by the day. We need prototypes within the month. If the specimens collapse, acquire more, and extract what you can from the human. His resonance is the key. As the general stormed out, Hamey caught Pell's middle eye lingering on him, uneasy. There was something the director wasn't saying. Jamie clenched his jaw. Whatever Project Empath truly was, it wasn't just science. It was the weaponization of compassion itself. The revelations in the lab haunted Jamie long after General Moore departed. The image of the sickly Kyrooans, their luminous fur dulled and patchy, etched itself into his mind. He could still feel their pain echoing in his chest like phantom bruises pressed into his ribs. The idea of weaponizing that suffering sickened him, and yet he had to keep playing along. When Pell dismissed the lab technicians and motioned for Jaime to remain behind, Jaime braced for interrogation. Instead, the director's voice dropped to a hushed, urgent tone. General Moore is reckless. Pell set his outer eyes flicking nervously toward the door, while his middle eye fixed on Jamie. The weapon he envisions will not only incapacitate enemies, it will annihilate their emotional centers entirely. Populations reduced to hollow shells. I cannot allow that. Jaime studied him warily. Funny considering you just strapped me down for tests. You must understand, Pell said, tension evident in his voice, the general has leverage over me. My family, my position, I have no choice but to cooperate publicly. But privately, he leaned closer, lowering his voice to a near whisper. Privately, I seek another path. The resonance cascade between you and the cub created something we had not predicted, a neural bridge. With the right protocols, it could disrupt the weaponization project permanently. But it requires you. Jaime's pulse quickened, and if I say no, then Moore will carve your brain apart until he has what he wants. That night, Jamie relayed everything to Lona through their encrypted channel. She listened silently as he described Pell's offer, her expression growing darker with every word. You can't trust him, she said. Maybe not, but he's the only insider willing to stand against Moore. Without his access, we'll never get close enough to shut the project down. Lona's hand tightened around the cub Stellar, who purred softly in her lap. And the cost? Jaime hesitated. Pell hadn't sugarcoated it. The human catalyst risked permanent psychological damage. Neural collapse, emotional death. If I do this, there's a chance I won't come back, Jamie admitted. Lona's amber eyes shimmered with anguish. She crossed the room in 2 strides, gripping his shoulders. Then we'll find another way. I refuse to watch you sacrifice yourself. He cupped her face, brushing away the tears she hadn't realized were falling. Lona, if this is the only way to protect the Saruans and Earth's colonies too, then it's worth it. If compassion is what Moore fears most, then maybe compassion is our strongest weapon. Her lips trembled. I love that about you, and I hate it too. The operation unfolded faster than either could have imagined. Vortex security was tightening daily, and Moore's timeline loomed like a guillotine. Pell arranged a secret rendezvous in a sealed laboratory beneath the main facility. When Jaime and Lona arrived, escorted through service quarters under the cover of night, Pell was already waiting with Nova and 3 adult Saruans he had secretly freed from their containment units. They looked healthier, though scars of their captivity lingered in their dimmed eyes. The neural bridge must be initiated now, Pell said without preamble. Once Moore discovers I've diverted resources, he will unleash everything. The cubs bounded toward Jaime, their glowing fur leaving trails of sapphire light across the floor. Nova pressed against his leg, Stellar perched against Lona's shoulder. Their presence steadied him. What exactly happens when we start? Jamie asked. Pell adjusted the array of sensors and crystalline conduits encircling the chamber. Your empathic patterns will serve as a catalyst. They will synchronize the Saruans into a network, amplifying their resonance across the galaxy. The surge will corrupt every data set tied to Project Empath, rendering the research useless. And Mihami pressed. Pell's outer eyes flicked away. The strain on a human brain will be severe, perhaps irreparable. Chaimi glanced at Lona. She stood tall, but her hands trembled around the Stellar's small body. He reached for her free hand, lacing his fingers with hers. If this works, we'll save them, and maybe more. That has to be enough. Lona's voice shook. Then promise me one thing, come back to me, no matter what it takes. He kissed her forehead in the intimate gesture she had taught him. I'll try. That's all I can give. They placed him in the center of the chamber, sensors clamped to his temples and chest. Nova and Stellar curled at his feet, while the adult Saruans formed a triangle around him. Their fur glowed faintly, awaiting connection. Lona knelt in front of him, tears glimmering in her eyes. I'll monitor your neural patterns. The moment strain becomes too great, I'll end it. They both knew that by then it might be too late. Do it, Jaime said. Pell activated the array. The surge hit instantly. Jaime's vision exploded in colors: blues, purples, starbursts, too intricate to describe. His awareness expanded outward, tethered to the cubs, and then to the adults, and then beyond them. He felt threads stretching across space, linking him to Saruans scattered on distant worlds. Hundreds, thousands, each mind a star in a vast constellation of shared emotion. A symphony of feelings washed over him. Fear, hope, longing, love. He felt newborn cubs nursing in hidden dens, wild packs racing beneath alien moons, survivors huddled in cages whispering to one another in empathic comfort. It was overwhelming, beautiful, infinite. It's working, Lona's voice echoed distantly, though she seemed both near and impossibly far. The empathic field is expanding exponentially. Jaime surrendered to it, letting his sense of self dissolve into the collective. For a fleeting moment, he was everywhere at once. He was the cub pressed against a sibling for warmth. He was the adult who had lost 3 litters to hunters. He was the wild Kuruan who had never known chains sprinting through forests under starlight. And then came the pain. White-hot needles stabbed into his skull, his nervous system convulsing under the strain. His body arched against the restraints, a hoarse cry tearing from his throat. His patterns are destabilizing, Pell shouted. Human brains aren't designed for this. Jaime Lona's voice pierced the haze, desperate. Come back to me. He clung to her voice, to the memory of her lips on his, to the warmth of her body against his in the quiet of the apartment. He forced the connection through that anchor, channeling everything he had left into one final surge. A pulse of pure compassion erupted from him. Love not just for Lona or the cubs, but for every life that deserved protection. The wave rippled through the network, burning brighter than any star. Then darkness swallowed him. When awareness returned, it was slow and hollow. Jaime opened his eyes to sunlight streaming through wide windows. He lay in a soft bed, sheets pulled over his chest. Purple mountains stretched across the horizon outside. You're awake. Lona's voice drew his gaze. She sat beside him, her silver hair loose, her amber eyes wet with relief. How do you feel? She asked. Jaime considered. The question floated in his mind, distant, empty. I don't, he said at last. His voice was flat, alien to his own ears. I don't feel anything. Pain flashed across her face. The surge burned out your emotional centers. Pell warned this might happen. Jaime nodded mechanically. Did it work? Her lips trembled into a smile. More than worked. The surge created a permanent empathic network across the Saruans. They are protected now. No one can isolate or exploit them again. Moore's research was destroyed completely. Good, Jaime said simply. The word fell like a stone into silence. Lona reached for his hand. He felt the pressure of her touch, but no warmth, no rush of affection. It was mechanical sensation only. Jaime, she whispered, if your feelings never return, then you'll love enough for both of us, he finished, clinically repeating her earlier words without conviction. Tears slipped down her cheeks. She bent forward, pressing her forehead to his. I meant it, and I won't stop. For the first time, a faint echo stirred in his hollow chest, not an emotion, not fully, but the memory of one, a whisper of what love had felt like. Outside, the cubs chirped softly, their fur glowing, as if they too sensed his emptiness and sought to fill it. For days after the neural bridge, Jaime drifted in a twilight state. He could walk, speak, eat, but the spark that animated those acts was gone. Emotions had always been the quiet pulse behind his life, but now there was only silence. He watched Lona move about the sanctuary chamber, her hair glimmering in the soft light, her eyes heavy with worry. He knew she was beautiful. The fact registered in his mind as a fact, like a mathematical observation. But beauty stirred nothing in him. Pell visited once, his expression unreadable as always. The neural pathways may regenerate, he said, clinically adjusting readings on a portable scanner. The human brain is remarkably plastic, but it will take time, weeks, months, perhaps years. Lona's fingers tightened around Hami's hand, and if they don't, Pell hesitated, then inclined his head. Then he will remain as he is, functional but hollow. He glanced at Jamie with his middle eye, perhaps searching for resentment, but Jamie simply nodded. Efficient resolution, Jamie said, and Pell's outer eyes flickered in discomfort. After Pell left, Lona collapsed beside Jamie, her shoulders trembling. He turned toward her, puzzled. "Why are you crying?" "Because you're alive," she whispered fiercely, "and because I might never hear you say you love me again." He considered that, filing it away. The memory of the words was there, though stripped of meaning. Yet when she kissed him, something flickered deep inside, a faint warmth, quickly gone. It was the cubs who refused to let him fade into emptiness. Nova and Stellar stayed close, refusing to leave his side even when offered open fields beyond the sanctuary walls. They climbed onto his lap, nestled against his chest, their galaxy-filled eyes watching him with patient devotion. At first, their touch meant nothing more than physical sensation, but slowly, almost imperceptibly, Jamie began to feel faint echoes. A whisper of contentment when Stellar purred. A trace of comfort when Nova pressed his small body against Jamie's hand. One morning, as sunlight spilled across the sanctuary balcony, Nova chirped softly, and Jamie startled at a spark in his chest. It was tiny, fragile, but it was there. He looked down at the cub, and for the first time since the surge, a word formed naturally in his mind. Affection. Lona, overhearing, spun toward him, her eyes wide with hope. "You felt it." He nodded slowly. "Something, just a little." Tears glimmered in her eyes, but this time they were joyful. "The Saruans are healing you." I knew they would. Weeks turned into months. Jamie's emotions returned like hesitant visitors, one at a time. First came irritation when Stellar chewed through the corner of his boots. Then amusement when Nova toppled into a bowl of herbs and sneezed blue powder for an hour. Gratitude followed when Lona nursed him through a fever, her cool hands brushing his brow. And then slowly deeper feelings began to surface again. Anticipation before she returned from Aaron's relief. When she leaned into his arms, the first threads of passion rekindling in quiet moments under the sanctuary's twin moons. His emotional landscape was still fractured, some valleys barren, but the peaks were rising. And through it all, the cubs remained his constant companions, glowing faintly whenever his feelings flickered back to life, as if guiding him through the darkness. 6 months later, Jaime stood on the balcony of the sanctuary complex, his arm draped around Lona's shoulders. Below them, dozens of rescued Saruans roamed freely in the protected habitat. The valley stretched wide and green, dotted with crystalline pools that reflected the sky like shards of sapphire. Nova and Stellar, now nearly full-grown, lounged in the sun nearby. Their eyes still held galaxies, but their bodies had grown sleek, powerful. They raised their heads whenever Jaime moved, protective and loyal. "The Earth delegation arrives tomorrow," Lona said softly, leaning against him. "Are you nervous?" Jaime considered, searching his still-mending emotions. A little, he admitted, but mostly proud. The cross-species protection laws they're proposing, they wouldn't exist without what we did. "What you did," she corrected, her amber eyes glowing. "Your willingness to risk everything for creatures others saw as food. That is humanity's gift to the galaxy." He turned to her, studying her in the golden light. "Not just humanity's, yours too. Without you, I wouldn't have made it this far." She smiled faintly. "We made it together." That evening, they shared a quiet meal as the sun set. The cubs sprawled lazily nearby, their fur glimmering with the fading light. Jamie felt something stir inside him as he watched Lona laugh softly at Stellar's antics. Not just a flicker this time, but a steady flame. I love you, he said suddenly. The words slipped out naturally unforced. Lona froze her eyes, wide lips parting. I think I loved you from the moment I saw you stand up for those cubs in the market. Jamie continued, his voice rough with sincerity. Even when I lost myself, the memory of that feeling, it pulled me back. Her amber eyes glistened. She reached for his face, her fingers trembling. And I've loved you since you threw yourself between a cleaver and two frightened alien puppies. Jamie, you gave me hope for the entire galaxy. They kissed then slow and tender, the kind of kiss that sealed not just affection, but shared destiny. The cubs chirped contentedly, curling against them as though affirming the bond. News of Vortek's downfall spread quickly across the sector. The empathic surge had not only destroyed Moore's research, but also shattered his grip on power. Whistleblower files leaked through Pell's careful maneuvering revealed the atrocities of Project Empath, turning public sentiment violently against the general and his allies. The Galactic Council convened, launching an investigation that rocked the foundations of interstellar politics. For the first time, human representatives were invited not as petitioners but as equals, their compassion cited as a force too unpredictable and too valuable to ignore. Jaime and Lona watched the proceedings from afar, content in the sanctuary. Yet word filtered back, humans were being hailed as a species that could shift the balance of galactic order. Not through weapons, not through conquest, but through something far stranger. Empathy. On the morning the Earth delegation arrived, Jamie stood once more on the balcony. He wore a simple tunic instead of armor, his blonde hair tousled by the breeze. Lona joined him, her silver braids glinting in the sun. Nova and Stellar pressed close on either side, their glowing fur brushing against his legs. Ready, Lona asked. As I'll ever be, he said, his mouth curving into a smile that felt fully real again. When the delegation appeared in the valley below, humans in crisp uniforms flanked by alien allies, Jamie felt his chest tighten. Pride, fear, hope, all mingling together. Emotions he'd feared lost forever now surged back in full color. And as he looked at Lona, he realized the truth. His sacrifice had not broken him. It had remade him. That night, as stars glittered above the sanctuary, Jaime lay beside Lona with Nova and Stellar curled protectively at their feet. He reflected on the strange journey that had brought him here, from a failed job interview to saving an entire species from losing his emotions to rediscovering them through love. He had come to Proxima seeking a career. Instead, he had found a cause, a partner, and a family that defied biology and boundaries. Sometimes the most profound revolutions began not with armies or weapons, but with a single act of compassion, even saving alien puppies from a barbecue.